A bathroom shelf with 3 things on it: cocoa butter, witch hazel, 1 lipstick. The woman it belongs to is 53, and her skin is flawless. You have 37 products and a 10-step routine, and she has something you can't buy back. Nobody taught you what she knew, because the women who knew it stopped being asked, and what they knew couldn't be bottled. So it was quietly replaced with something you'd have to keep buying forever. So I've gathered all of my best videos on Black 1950s women beauty secrets that still work today and put them into one long movies for all of y'all to enjoy. Grab some popcorn and let's begin. There's a photograph of a woman named Ruth from 1954. She is standing outside a church in Memphis, Tennessee, in a printed cotton dress, hat tilted forward, skin catching the afternoon light in a way that stops you when you look at it. She is 41 years old in this photograph. You would not guess 41. You would not guess anywhere near 41. She did not own a single product with the word serum on the label. She had never heard the word collagen used in a skincare context. She did not have a 10-step routine, a dermatologist, a chemical peel, or a subscription box arriving at her door every month. What she had was a bathroom shelf with 7 items on it. 6 of them cost less than $1. The 7th was a jar her sister sent from home every spring, and a set of rules so specific and so effective that the women around her all had the same face, the same smooth skin, the same unhurried aging, because they were all following the same rules. Rules passed mother to daughter in the same matter-of-fact way that a recipe was passed. No ceremony, no explanation. Just, this is how you do it. Now you know. Then the beauty industry arrived in Black women's lives with a specific message. What you have is not enough. What you are doing is not working. We have something better. It came in gold packaging. It came in full-page advertisements in Ebony magazine. It came with before and after photographs and clinical sounding language and promises that the jar on Ruth's bathroom shelf could not make because it was not trying to sell her anything. The industry did not offer better results. It offered doubt. And once a woman doubts what she has, she will buy what she is sold. This video is what Ruth had before the industry arrived. Before number 9, subscribe. This is exactly what this channel is here to make. Hit that button. Then let's go. Number 9. She washed her face with cold water in the morning. Warm water opened the pores. Cold water closed them. Ruth used warm water at night to cleanse, and cold water in the morning to wake the skin up and tighten what the night had loosened. This was not a technique she had read about. It was what her mother had shown her at the bathroom sink when she was 12. The cold water morning rinse does 2 things the dermatology industry now charges for. It reduces morning puffiness by constricting the blood vessels near the surface of the skin, and it briefly tightens the appearance of pores, which sit more open in the warmth of a bed and close under cold. It costs nothing. It takes 30 seconds. It requires no product. The global facial toning market, devices, mists, and serums designed to mimic the effect of cold water on the face, is now worth over $2 billion a year. Ruth ran the cold tap in the morning. Number 8. She never used the soap that came off the bathroom counter on her face. The bar of ivory on Ruth's sink was for her body. It never went above the jawline. Her mother had told her this. Her grandmother had told her mother. Standard bar soap sits at a pH of 9 to 10. Human skin maintains its natural acid mantle at a pH between 4.5 and 5.5. Washing the face with alkaline soap strips, that mantle disrupts the skin's moisture barrier, and in darker skin types, can trigger the overproduction of melanin as the skin attempts to repair itself, producing the dark spots and uneven tone that the skincare industry then sells correctors and brighteners to fix. Ruth never created the problem. She never needed the fix. The facial cleanser market is now worth over $15 billion a year. It was built on convincing women their faces were dirty in a way that water alone could not address. Ruth washed her face with water. Her skin never needed anything more because she never stripped it of what it already had. Number 7. She oiled her skin while it was still damp. Every morning after washing her face and every evening after bathing, Ruth applied whatever oil or butter she was using while her skin still held surface moisture, not dried off completely. Damp. She pressed a towel to her face and blotted once, and the oil went on immediately after. This was the rule in her household and in the households of every woman she knew. You do not moisturize dry skin. You seal the moisture that is already there. The mechanism is real, and it is documented. The window immediately after water contact, while the skin is still warm and the surface is damp, is when occlusive and emollient ingredients penetrate most effectively. Applying oil or butter to completely dry skin creates a barrier over nothing. Applying it to damp skin traps the water already present in the upper layers of the dermis. The difference in outcome over 40 years of daily practice is not subtle. Modern skincare lines now sell this as the damp skin application method, presenting it as a recent discovery and packaging specific products to be used in the specific window. Ruth's mother had been doing it since before anyone printed it in a magazine. Number 6, castor oil on the edges. Every week. Along the hairline, where the hair meets the forehead and temples, the skin is thin. The follicles are delicate, and the hair is the first to thin. Ruth rubbed a small amount of castor oil into her edges every week without exception. She had been doing this since her 20s. The women in her family did it. The women on her block did it. Nobody called it a treatment. It was just maintenance. Castor oil is primarily ricinoleic acid, a fatty acid with documented anti-inflammatory properties. Research has found it supports circulation to the follicle and creates a protective barrier around the hair shaft at the scalp line. The FDA approves castor oil as safe for topical use, and it appears as an active ingredient in dozens of hairline and edge restoration products, now sold at prices between $20 and $60 per small bottle. Ruth bought a bottle of castor oil for 29 cents. It lasted 3 months. Her edges held for 60 years. Number 5, she slept on satin and never washed her face with hot water at night. 2 things happened in Ruth's house before bed, every night. The pillowcase on her bed was satin weave fabric, passed down from her mother, replaced when it wore thin. Never substituted for cotton because cotton had never been on her face at night in this family. And it was not going to start. Cotton fibers are rough at the microscopic level. 8 hours of that friction against the same side of the face, in the same position, in the same patterns, creates sleep compression lines that deepen into permanent creases over decades of repetition. Ruth's satin pillowcase cost $2. The silk pillowcase market now generates over $400 million a year, and the water she used to cleanse her face at night was warm. Never hot. Hot water inflames. In darker skin, inflammation means melanin response, and melanin response means dark spots. She had never been taught why hot water was wrong. She had been taught that it was wrong. The why came later. The result was the same either way. Number 4, beeswax and petroleum jelly on the lips every morning before leaving the house. Ruth did not leave the house with dry lips. Before the lipstick went on, a thin layer of something emollient went on first. Some mornings, it was the petroleum jelly on the bathroom shelf. Some mornings, it was a small piece of the raw beeswax her neighbor kept from the hives at the back of her property. The lipstick went over it. The lips have no oil glands. They cannot moisturize themselves. Every hour they are exposed to air, they lose moisture through evaporation, and the skin there, the thinnest and most delicate on the face, shows it loss faster than anywhere else. The vertical lines around the lip line that are now treated with filler and laser resurfacing begin with years of daily desiccation that a layer of beeswax costs nothing to prevent. Ruth's lips at 60 looked like her lips at 30. She never thought about why. She just never left the house without that layer in place. Before number 3, subscribe if you have not already. This channel exists to recover exactly this knowledge. It is right there. Number 3. She stayed out of the midday sun and never once thought of it as a beauty strategy. In Memphis in July, nobody with any sense was outside between 11 in the morning and 3 in the afternoon. Ruth did her outdoor work before 9 or after 4. She wore a wide-brimmed hat in the garden. She sat in the shade at church picnics. She walked on the shaded side of the street when she had a choice. This was not vanity. This was common sense about heat. It was also, without her knowing it, the single most effective anti-aging practice available to any woman in any era. Ultraviolet radiation is the primary driver of photoaging. The collagen breakdown, the loss of skin elasticity, the fine lines and pigmentation changes that are responsible for most of what we recognize as visible aging. Darker skin contains more melanin, which provides a natural SPF equivalent of approximately 13.4, a significant biological advantage. But melanin does not make skin immune to UV damage. It slows the process. Ruth's habit of seeking shade compounded the advantage she already had biologically. She was not depleting her head start. She was adding to it daily for 60 years. The global sunscreen market is worth over $11 billion a year. Ruth never bought a bottle. The shade was free. The hat was $1.95 at the dry goods counter. Number 2, raw shea butter on the driest places. The same jar every year along the hairline, the knuckles in winter, the elbows, the heels, the corners of the mouth when the cold came. Ruth had a small glass jar, no label, no brand name, that her sister sent every spring from their home county. Shea butter extracted from the nut of the shea tree, unrefined, pale yellow, with a faint earthy smell that meant it had not been processed into something more marketable. She used a small amount, melted between her palms, pressed into the skin in slow circles until it disappeared. Unrefined shea butter contains vitamins A, E, and F, phytosterols, and a concentration of fatty acids that support collagen production and skin barrier repair. Research published in the American Journal of Life Sciences documented its anti-inflammatory properties and its capacity to support the skin's natural elasticity. The global shea butter market is now worth over $1.7 billion a year. The same ingredient, rendered in a laboratory and sold in a frosted glass pot with a French name, costs $80 at a department store counter. Ruth's jar came from her sister. It cost nothing because it was family. Number 1, she did not believe a single thing the industry later told her was wrong with her skin. This is the one. In the 1950s, the campaign to tell Black women that their skin was a problem requiring correction was already decades old and accelerating. Bleaching creams containing mercury and hydroquinone ran full-page advertisements in every Black publication in America. Natanola, Palmer's Skin Success, black and white cream. The message was explicit, consistent, and deliberate. Your natural complexion is a flaw. We have the correction. What those advertisements were selling was not skincare. They were selling a belief. The belief that a Black woman's natural skin tone was something to be managed toward a lighter result. That the evenness and depth of melanin-rich skin was not beauty, but a problem to be solved. Ruth did not buy it. Not the product, not the premise. She had been raised by a woman who looked at her face and told her what it was. Not a project, not a before photograph waiting for an after. A face. Her face. Worth caring for, and worth leaving alone in the same breath. The 7 things on Ruth's bathroom shelf worked together because none of them were trying to fix something that was not broken. The cold water rinse and the damp skin application and the satin pillowcase and the hat and the jar from her sister. All of it was care, not correction. The distinction sounds simple. It is not simple. It is the thing the industry has spent billions of dollars trying to collapse. Because a woman who is caring for something she already believes is whole does not buy what a woman who is correcting a deficit will buy. She is not a growth market. She is not a customer waiting to be made. She is Ruth standing outside a church in Memphis in 1954, the afternoon light on her skin, 41 years old and looking not a year of it. The beauty industry did not bury these tricks because they did not work. It buried them because they worked too well to need anything else. Ruth's granddaughter still has the glass jar, the one her sister used to send. She orders unrefined shea butter online now, the same thing in a different container, and she uses it the same way Ruth used it. Damp skin, slow circles, until it disappears. She figured it out by herself, or thought she did. She did not figure it out by herself. She remembered it. Pick one thing from this list. Put it on your bathroom shelf this week. Come back in the comments and tell me what changed. The next video is ready. 1954 back porch in the evening. A woman sits on a kitchen chair with a jar of cocoa butter open beside her, and she is working it into her hands, her elbows, the back of her neck, slow, without looking. And the way you do a thing you have done 10,000 times. She is 58 years old. Her skin has no business looking the way it looks. No lines at the mouth, no crepe at the throat. A softness at the cheek that the young women at church quietly study and cannot explain. Somebody once asked her what she used. She laughed. She didn't have an answer because the answer wasn't a product. It was a life. You have a shelf of serums, retinol, vitamin C, a jar of something with gold in the name that cost more than her whole month of groceries. And you stand at the mirror at 40 and wonder why the woman on that porch at 58 had something you can't buy back. Nobody taught you what she knew, not because it was a secret, but because the women who knew it stopped being asked. And what they knew could not be put in a bottle and sold. 15 habits. Ordinary in her house, ordinary on her whole street. Every one of them worked. Every one cost almost nothing. And every single one was quietly replaced, not by something better, but by something more expensive. Number 7 is the one she did every Saturday night that the entire beauty industry has spent 70 years trying to make you forget. Number 1 is not a product at all. It's the reason every other habit on this list worked and the one they most need you not to remember. Before number 15, subscribe. This channel exists to put this knowledge back in the hands it was taken from. Hit that button, then let's go. Number 15, cocoa butter. Every day on everything. The jar sat on the dresser with the lid loose because it was opened every morning and every night. Palmer's, the one with the paper label, or a block of raw cocoa butter a cousin sent up from down south, wrapped in wax paper, hard as soap until it hit the warmth of her hands and turned to oil. She worked it into her face, her neck, her hands, her heels, her elbows, the stretch marks from 4 babies that never turned silver because she never let the skin go dry. It is one of the most stable natural fats there is, melting at exactly skin temperature, forming an occlusive layer that holds the skin's own moisture in overnight. Researchers studying barrier repair emollients confirm that occlusive fats reduce transepidermal water loss dramatically, the single largest driver of the fine lines and slack skin we call aging. She did not know the phrase transepidermal water loss. She knew that dry skin ages and moisturized skin doesn't, because she could see it on the women who let themselves go dry. Palmer's cocoa butter has existed since the 1840s and still costs a few dollars. The anti-aging moisturizer category, built on the exact same principle, is now worth over $90 billion a year. She paid pennies for the thing they sell you for 90. She just called it Tuesday. Number 14, Shea Butter, before anyone here had a name for it. In the better-stocked households, there was a second jar, heavier, the color of cream gone yellow, thick as lard. Shea. It came through family, through the church network, through somebody who knew somebody, long before a single American company printed the word on a label. She used it on the deep dryness cocoa butter couldn't reach. The heels in winter. The knuckles. A patch of eczema on a child's arm, a scar. It went on heavy and it stayed. Raw shea butter is loaded with vitamin A, vitamin E, and compounds called triterpenes that studies have linked to reduced inflammation and improved collagen production. Collagen is the scaffolding of the face. When it holds, the face stays lifted. When it goes, the face falls. She was feeding the scaffolding every night without knowing the word for it. Today, Shea is whipped into 100 products, cut with water and fillers, sold at $40 for 4 ounces. The raw block she used was closer to the source and closer to free. The industry didn't improve shea butter. It diluted it and marked it up. Number 13, castor oil, the one bottle that did 10 jobs. A small dark bottle from the drugstore, thick and slow to pour, the kind of thick that clings to the spoon. 30 cents. It sat 2 aisles from everything, and it lasted a year. She warmed a few drops in her palms and pressed it into her edges, the fine hair at the temples and the nape, where breakage shows first and where age shows first. She dragged a clean fingertip of it through her eyebrows to keep them full when everyone else's were thinning. Before bed, the barest coat on the lashes. Castor oil is roughly 90% ricinoleic acid, a fatty acid with documented anti-inflammatory and circulation-stimulating properties, which is precisely why it holds hair in the follicle and keeps the delicate skin around the eye supple. The lash serum, brow growth, and edge control markets are 3 separate industries now, worth billions between them. She had 1 bottle. It did all 3. Her lashes were long, and her brows were full, and her edges laid down at 70, and she never once bought a serum, because the serum was sitting in the medicine cabinet the whole time under a name nobody thought to advertise. Number 12, Vaseline, the seal over everything. 19 cents in 1955, 6 months to a jar. After the cocoa butter, after the castor oil, the last step was always the same. A thin film of petroleum jelly over the top, the seal that locked the good oils underneath against the skin all night. She touched it to the high point of the cheekbone in the morning, over her powder, and the light caught it, that lit from within look photographers spent whole afternoons trying to fake. She smoothed a trace over her lips before the door. Petroleum jelly is the most effective occlusive known to dermatology. It reduces water loss through the skin by more than 99%, a number no luxury night cream has ever beaten because it physically cannot be beaten. The industry's answer to a $4 jar was an $18 eye cream, a $30 lip treatment, and a $24 glow drop. The jar didn't change. Only the marketing did. She sealed her skin every night of her life, and the seal held. Number 11, black soap, brought over and passed down. A rough, dark bar, uneven, crumbly at the edges, nothing like the pretty pressed cakes at the store. African black soap, made from plantain skins and cocoa pods burned to ash and cooked with palm oil. carried across an ocean and kept alive in kitchens over here for 200 years. She washed her face with it and her skin came clean without the tight, stripped feeling that tells you the acid mantle is gone. It didn't strip, it balanced. Real black soap carries vitamin A and E and natural exfoliating acids from the plantain ash. And modern skin science confirms what those kitchens knew, that gentle exfoliation plus a preserved moisture barrier is the entire foundation of skin that stays smooth for decades. The exfoliating cleanser and chemical peel categories together are worth billions now, sold on the promise of cell turnover. She turned her cells over with a 5-cent bar of burnt plantain and palm oil, and her face was smooth at 60. Nobody could patent a recipe 2 centuries old and made in a pot. That was the problem. Number 10, the Saturday night scalp ritual. This is the one that built the crown. Saturday evening, hair sectioned, and into each part went the oil. Dixie peach in the yellow tin, a royal crown, or a spoon of warmed castor oil worked in at the root with the pads of the fingers in slow circles. It was never rushed. The radio was on. A daughter sat between her mother's knees on a cushion on the floor, and this went on for an hour, and it was oiling, and it was massage, and it was 2 generations in one room, and none of them called it self-care because it didn't need a name. The scalp massage matters more than the oil. Increased circulation to the follicle is one of the only mechanisms clinically shown to support hair density over time. She was doing weekly, for free, what a scalp health clinic now charges $200 a session to perform. The hair held, the edges held. The gray, when it finally came in strong and full instead of thin and dry. The crown was tended every single Saturday, and it showed for 50 years. Number 9, the kitchen deep conditioner. Before wash day, out came things that lived in the refrigerator, not the bathroom. A beaten egg, or a scoop of mayonnaise, or a spoon of Queen Helene, worked through the length from the ears down, a warm, damp towel wrapped over the top, 20 minutes while she finished the ironing. Egg yolk is protein and lecithin. Protein to rebuild the strand, lecithin to soften it. It did exactly what a $25 salon protein treatment promises today, and it came from a carton that was never out of stock. She rinsed it cool, never hot, because she knew hot water cooks an egg, and her hair came out heavier, smoother, moving in one piece. The protein treatment shelf at the beauty supply is a whole economy now. She built the same thing from an EGG in 20 quiet minutes. Number 8, the satin scarf every single night, the last thing before sleep. A square of satin or a silk scarf from the notions counter, folded and tied at the nape or wrapped smooth around the whole set. 25 cents at Woolworth's. It did 2 things. Protected the set so the hair looked done for a week instead of a night. And the part nobody talks about, it protected the skin. Cotton pillowcases drag on the face and pull the fine skin at the eyes and mouth 8 hours a night, 3,000 nights a decade. Satin doesn't pull. Dermatologists now recommend silk pillowcases specifically to reduce the creasing that turns into permanent lines. They sell them for $80. She tied a 25-cent scarf over her hair and got the same protection for her face as a side effect every night without ever being told it was a beauty product. To her, it was just getting ready for tomorrow. Now, before I give you number 7, and number 7 is the heart of this whole list, I have to tell you something. These 15 habits are the ones I could fit in one video. There are more. Dozens more. The full collection, every recipe, every measurement, every oil and rinse and remedy these women used, written down plainly so you can start tonight. I've put all of it into one book. You can find it in the description. It is not a subscription. There is nothing to sign up for and nothing to buy every month. It is the knowledge in your hands once. The way it used to be passed down at the kitchen table before somebody decided it should cost you $40 a jar instead. The link is right below this video in the description. If there is a woman in your life who deserves to have this back, your mother, your sister, your daughter, the friend spending $200 a month on creams that are not working, get it for her too. She needs this more than she knows. Now, number 7, rose water and witch hazel, the tonic every morning. 2 bottles at the sink. Rose water, 20 cents from the pharmacy. Witch hazel, a quarter. Every morning and every night, a cotton pad pressed over the face and the neck. The witch hazel tightened the pores and calmed inflammation and lifted the last of the oil without stripping. The rose water followed, cooling, and it did something the industry now charges $80 for. Rose water contains phenylethanol and flavonoids, the same antioxidant mechanism a vitamin C serum claims, in a gentler and more stable form. Antioxidants are the defense against the free radical damage that ages skin from the outside in. 2 bottles, 45 cents, doing the work of a serum, a toner, and a treatment that would run you $150 at the counter today. Her grandmother used 3 things, and her skin looked better at 70 than most of ours does at 40. That is not nostalgia. That is the record. Number 6, the steam and the hot cloth. Once a week, a pot of water brought to steam on the stove, sometimes a few dried herbs thrown in, chamomile, a little mint from the yard. She leaned over it with a towel over her head, and the steam opened everything, softened everything, brought the blood up to the surface. Then the hot cloth laid over the face until it cooled. Then the cocoa butter going onto skin that was warm and open and ready to drink it in. Steam increases circulation and softens the outer layer, so everything applied after works deeper. This is the entire principle behind the $200 hydrofacial on every spa menu in America. She did it at her own stove with a pot of water and a dish towel and paid nothing because water and heat cannot be trademarked. Number 5, buttermilk and honey, the glow from the pantry. On a Sunday, before church, sometimes a mask. Buttermilk, a spoon of honey, mixed in a teacup and smoothed over the face. Left on while the curlers set. Rinsed cool. Buttermilk carries lactic acid, a natural alpha hydroxy acid, the exact same active ingredient sold today in $65 resurfacing bottles, and it gently dissolves the dull, dead surface to bring the fresh skin up underneath. The honey is a humectant. It pulls moisture out of the air and into the skin, and it kills surface bacteria on the way. She rinsed it, and the mirror showed a face 5 years younger, brighter, even lit. The acid did the smoothing, the honey did the plumping. The whole thing cost a dime and came from the same refrigerator as breakfast. The AHA Glow aisle is a $1 billion shelf now. She built it in a teacup on a Sunday morning. Number 4, she ate the collagen before anyone sold it. Aging is not only on the skin, it is under it, in the collagen, in the scaffolding of the whole face. And she fed that scaffolding at the table without ever thinking of it as beauty. The neck bones and the ox tails and the pig's feet simmered for hours until the liquid went thick and set like jelly when it cooled. That is pure collagen and gelatin, the same molecule now freeze-dried and sold in a canister for $40 and called a beauty supplement. The greens, cooked slow, delivered the vitamin C and the minerals that let the body actually build collagen instead of just eating it. Nothing was wasted. The parts of the animal nobody else wanted turned out to be the parts that kept her face full and her joints loose at 70. She simmered the bones because wasting food was a sin and the stove was already on. The glow was a side effect she never had to pay for. Number 3, water and the tonics that weren't sugar. She drank water all day from the tap in a jelly jar without ceremony. And when she wanted something more, it wasn't a soda, it was a tonic, sassafras or sarsaparilla, a little apple cider vinegar in warm water in the morning, herbs from the yard steeped into a tea. Skin is the last organ to receive water and the first to show its absence. A body kept hydrated holds its skin plump and full. A body running dry shows it at the face first. The beverage industry replaced the jelly jar of water and the homemade tonic with $300 billion of sweetened liquid, every drop of it either doing nothing for the skin or working against it. Because sugar in the bloodstream binds to collagen and stiffens it in a process scientists literally call glycation. Glycation is one of the primary drivers of visible aging. She drank water and bitter tonics and unsweetened tea her whole life. The generation that switched to soda did not look younger. It looked the opposite. When I started pulling this together, I expected to find that these women simply had better genes. That is not what the record shows. What the record shows is a whole way of living that had not yet been broken apart and sold back in pieces. Not one habit on this list required a subscription. Not one required an app, a membership, or anything with a laboratory on the label. What they required was knowledge and time, and a mother willing to sit you between her knees on a Saturday and show you. The discipline gap between then and now is real. But the reason it exists is that everything that used to be free, the oil, the egg, the bones, the scarf, the water, the hour on the porch, was replaced one item at a time with something you had to keep buying. They didn't sell her better skin. They sold her the belief that her skin was a problem. And then they sold her the cure. Number 2 and number 1 are where that truth lands hardest. Number 2, she protected it from the sun without a single bottle. Long before anyone marketed a lotion for it, she guarded her skin from the harshest thing there is. The wide-brimmed church hat was not only for style, the gloves were not only for manners, the long sleeves in the field, the parasol, the shade of the porch, chosen deliberately over the sun of the yard. Ultraviolet light is responsible for the overwhelming majority of what we call aging, the deep lines, the loss of firmness, the uneven tone. There is no cream on earth that reverses sun damage as effectively as simply not getting it in the first place. She covered up. She sat in the shade. She wore the hat to the mailbox. And her skin, protected across 50 years of ordinary days, stayed smooth and even in a way no serum can buy. Back once the damage is done. The most expensive anti-aging product in the world is the shade she stepped into for free. Number 1, she never left herself undone, and she was never alone in it. This is not a product. It is the reason every other thing on this list worked. She did not skip the ritual. Not when she was tired, not when she was grieving, not when money was short and the babies were sick and the week had taken everything. The cocoa butter still went on, the scarf still got tied, the Saturday oiling still happened, the face was still tended before the door opened on Sunday. It was not vanity, it was dignity. In a world that spent every day telling her she was less, the ritual was how she told herself she was worth the 15 minutes, worth the cocoa butter, worth the care, worth showing up whole. You did not walk out of your house undone. And she was never doing it alone. It came down to her from her mother and her grandmother, and she passed it down to her daughters between her knees on a Saturday. An unbroken line of women handing the knowledge forward, hand to hand, generation to generation. That is the thing they took, not the cocoa butter. You can still buy the cocoa butter. They took the line. They stepped into the space between the mother and the daughter and said, you don't need her old ways. You need our new products. And the line went quiet, and 100 years of knowledge started to disappear, one silent kitchen at a time. She passed in 1981, past 80, and at the wake, the cousins said the same thing they'd been saying her whole life. She never looked her age. Her granddaughter found the jar of cocoa butter still on the dresser, the lid still loose, worn down to a fingerprint in the middle where a thumb had pressed it 10,000 times. She held it. She almost put it in the trash with the rest. Then she unscrewed the lid and the smell came up. Chocolate and something older than chocolate. And she was 6 years old again on a cushion between her grandmother's knees. And she understood, standing there, exactly what had almost been thrown away. The 15 habits that woman carried her whole life cost less, all of them combined across a year, than one jar of the cream they'll sell you now. None required a subscription. None required a label to read or a number to count. None required believing that your skin or your hair or your body was ever the problem. What changed between her dresser and yours was not what the skin needs. That has not changed since 1954. What changed was who got paid when the knowledge went quiet. So pick up the line. Pick one thing from this list: the cocoa butter, the scarf, the scalp oil, the shade, and start it tonight. Come back in the comments in a week and tell me what it did. And if you want the whole collection, everything that wouldn't fit here, it's in the book, in the description. Tell me one more thing down there while you're at it. Which of these did your mother or your grandmother actually do? I read every single comment. The next video is ready. I'll see you there. Her name was Dorothy. In 1957, she left her house in Birmingham on a Sunday morning in a dress she had made herself. A fitted bodice, a full skirt that landed just below the knee, a fabric she had bought for 60 cents a yard from the dry goods store on 4th Avenue. She had cut the pattern herself. She had taken in the waist by hand. She had pressed it the night before on an ironing board in the kitchen while her children slept. She stepped out of that house, and she looked like a woman who had spent $100 she did not have. She had spent 60 cents in 4 hours. The women on Dorothy's block could not walk into the department stores downtown. Not the main floor, not the fitting rooms. The signs were clear, and the rules were enforced, and the racks of clothing inside were not for them. What they had instead was each other. Neighborhood seamstresses shared patterns, inherited knowledge about fabric and fit, and what a woman's body actually needed from a garment. They had been sewing their own clothes for so long that by the time the department stores let them in, most of them had already outgrown the need. The style you see in photographs of Black women from that era, the tailored waists, the deliberate hats, the gloves, the pressed everything, did not come from money. It came from something the fashion industry has never been able to bottle or sell because it cannot be manufactured. It came from knowing exactly what you were doing and why, Before number 7, subscribe. This is exactly what this channel is here to make. Hit that button, then let's go. Number 7, she made it herself and it fit. The single most important reason Black women in the 1950s always look put together is a reason the fashion industry will never advertise. The clothes fit. Not because they could afford tailoring, because they did the tailoring. Sewing was not a hobby in Dorothy's house. It was infrastructure. Home economics classes in Black schools taught dressmaking as a core skill. Butterick and simplicity patterns were passed between neighbors and between generations, annotated in pen with adjustments for different bodies, different heights, different waists. A pattern Aunt Ida had altered in 1949 could still be found in someone's sewing box in 1961 with 3 generations of pencil marks across it. Zelda Wynne Valdez, the Black designer who dressed Eartha Kitt and Dorothy Dandridge, the woman who popularized the curve-hugging silhouette that became synonymous with 1950s glamour, was known in her shop for tailoring a dress to any body type, often without taking measurements. She had learned the skill by watching her grandmother's seamstress. She built a career from it. The women in Dorothy's neighborhood built a wardrobe from it. A dress that fits the body it belongs to will always look more expensive than a dress that doesn't. The entire fast fashion industry is built on the opposite principle. Clothes cut for a hypothetical average that fits no one exactly, sold at speed and volume to women who buy more to compensate for the fact that nothing quite works. The global fast fashion industry is now worth over $100 billion a year. Dorothy's needle and thread cost 30 cents and produced a garment that fit her body precisely because she had built it for her body specifically. Number 6, the hat was not a decoration. It was the whole outfit. Dorothy did not leave the house for church without a hat. Neither did anyone else on her block. The hat was not an accessory in the way the word accessory means something optional. It was the completing element without which the outfit was unfinished, the way a sentence without a period is unfinished. The Black church hat tradition runs deeper than fashion. During slavery and Jim Crow, Black women were restricted from wearing hats in many public spaces. A hat being considered a symbol of status that was not meant for them. Wearing a hat to church was, among other things, a refusal of that restriction. By the 1950s, it had become a non-negotiable element of Sunday dress, and the care that went into choosing it, the angle, the color, the relationship between the hat and the dress and the gloves, was a studied practice passed down alongside every other piece of domestic knowledge. The skill was architectural. A wide brim draws the eye upward and lengthens the silhouette. A pillbox worn forward closes the face and creates drama. A hat in the same family as the dress color unifies the look and signals intention. A hat, in contrast, creates visual interest and makes a simple dress memorable. Dorothy knew all of this, not because she had read it, but because she had watched it done her entire life. The global hat and millinery market is now worth over $8 billion a year. Most of that market is occasion hats. Items bought for weddings and special events and worn once. Dorothy wore hers every week. She knew how to wear it. That knowledge is the thing that cannot be purchased. And it is the thing the market replaced with a product while leaving the knowledge behind. Number 5, she ironed everything, every single thing. Friday evening in Dorothy's house meant the ironing board. Every piece of clothing that would be worn the following week was pressed flat before it went on the body that wore it. Not just church clothes, work clothes, everyday clothes. The children's school clothes laid out the night before, creased and smooth and ready. An ironed garment occupies space differently than an unironed one. It holds its shape. The collar lies flat. The seams are visible. The fabric does what it was designed to do rather than what gravity and a drawer have done to it. A 40-cent cotton dress, pressed in sharp, reads at a distance as something that costs 5 times as much. This is not a small thing. This is most of the thing. Dorothy did not press her clothes to impress anyone. She pressed them because her mother pressed them, and because stepping out of the house in wrinkled clothing was not something a woman of self-respect did. The standard was internal. It was not performed for an audience. It was just what you did before you left the house, the same way you washed your face. The global garment steamer and iron market is now worth over $5 billion a year. The knowledge of what to do with those tools, which fabrics take heat, which need steam, how to press a collar, how to crease a sleeve, has largely been lost in the generation that replaced the ironing board with permanent press and synthetic fabric. Dorothy had the tools for 50 cents. What she had that cost nothing was the discipline to use them. Before number 4, subscribe if you haven't already. This channel exists to recover exactly this kind of knowledge. The button is right there. Number 4, she dressed for her body, not the trend. Dorothy had been told by the neighborhood seamstress when she was 19 what worked on her frame. A fitted waist, an A-line skirt, nothing boxy across the shoulder. She had been listening to this information her entire adult life, and she had never bought anything that contradicted it. This was not unique to Dorothy. It was a feature of how women in her community approached clothes. The seamstress was not just a person who stitched fabric. She was a diagnostician. She walked around a woman and told her the truth about what her body needed from clothing, which lines elongated, which compressed, which emphasized what should be emphasized and minimized what was better quiet. That knowledge traveled from the seamstress to the customer to the daughter. It was not written down because it did not need to be written down. Everyone passed it person to person. The fashion industry requires the opposite of this knowledge to function. Trends must apply to everyone. This season's silhouette must be the one every woman wants. Personalized knowledge about what suits a specific body is a direct threat to volume, and volume is the business. If every woman knows exactly what works on her body and buys only that, the replacement cycle breaks. The industry needs uncertainty. Uncertainty is expensive. It was designed to be. Dorothy was never uncertain. She had been told the truth about her body at 19, and she had trusted that truth for the rest of her life. She never bought the wrong dress because she had never walked into a store or stood at her cutting table asking the wrong question. She wasn't asking what was fashionable. She was asking what was hers. Number 3, accessories were the entire strategy. Dorothy owned 6 dresses, maybe 7 in a good year. What she owned more of were the things that could make those 6 dresses look like 20. Gloves, scarves, 2 pairs of good shoes in neutral colors that worked across everything. A brooch her mother had given her that went on the lapel, the collar, or the belt depending on the day. A structured handbag that matched the darker of the 2 pairs of shoes. This was not poverty dressed up as philosophy. It was mathematics. A woman who rotates her accessories deliberately against a small wardrobe creates the impression of a wardrobe 3 times its actual size because the eye registers the combination, not the individual piece. The dress is a constant. The scarf changes it. The hat changes it again. The brooch moves to a different position, and the whole outfit reads as new. The global accessories market is now worth over $500 billion a year. Handbags, scarves, jewelry, belts, shoes sold as single pieces, replaced seasonally, accumulated into closets where nothing coordinates with anything else because nothing was bought with the whole in mind. Dorothy's accessories worked together because she bought each one with everything else she owned already in her head. Every piece had to earn its place by working with what already existed. Nothing came in that didn't increase the combinations available from what was already there. The industry does not want you to think in combinations. The industry wants you to think in individual pieces, each one complete in itself, each one requiring its own replacement. Dorothy was thinking in systems. The industry was not built to survive that. Number 2. She pressed her appearance in public as hard as she pressed her clothes at home. Walk, shoulders back, chin parallel to the floor. The skirt hangs even when the posture holds the body correctly. The collar sits flat. The silhouette the dress was designed to produce is the silhouette the body actually produces when it moves through the room, the way the dress expects it to. Dorothy's mother had shown her this the same way Dorothy's grandmother had shown it before that. Not as a beauty tip, as a standard. You did not walk into a room with your shoulders collapsed or your eyes down. Not in that era. Not in that community. In a world that was working constantly to communicate that Black women were worth less, the way you carried yourself in public was part of the answer you gave to that claim. During the Civil Rights era, the Sunday best tradition became an explicit political act. The women who marched and sat in and stood their ground wore their finest clothing deliberately, pressed dresses, good shoes, hats, and gloves, because they understood that the dignity they claimed through their appearance was itself an argument. There was no formal dress code. The dress code was the culture passed down through every woman on every block who understood that how you present yourself in a world that tries to diminish you is never a trivial matter. Dorothy walked like it mattered because it did. Number 1, she understood that looking elegant was not about what she had. It was about what she knew. This is the one the fashion industry cannot sell you. Dorothy could walk into any fabric store and come out with 60 cents worth of material and produce a garment that would make people ask who made it. She could take a dress she had worn for 3 years and move a button and change the silhouette and wear it somewhere new. She could coordinate a hat she had worn 15 times with a scarf she had inherited and look like something that had been planned by a stylist. None of this was available for purchase. Not the pattern recognition. Not the eye for fit. Not the knowledge of what her body needed and what it didn't. Not the understanding of proportion and color and occasion that meant she was never over or underdressed, because she knew, before she left the house, exactly where she was going and what that place required of her. The fashion industry grew by replacing knowledge with product. Once a woman knows what works on her body, she stops buying what doesn't. Once she can sew, she stops buying things that don't fit. Once she understands accessories as a system, she stops buying individual pieces that don't connect to anything else. The entire growth model of the fashion industry depended on removing this knowledge from circulation. It succeeded. Not entirely, not in every household, but enough. The seamstress on Dorothy's block retired in 1972. The sewing machine that had sat in the corner of her front room went to a granddaughter who used it occasionally, and then moved it to a closet in 1985. The patterns with the pencil adjustments were lost in a move sometime in the early 1990s. Dorothy's daughter shops online. She fills a cart, returns 60% of it, and keeps the pieces that almost fit. She has more clothes in her wardrobe than her mother owned in her lifetime. She stands in front of them on Sunday mornings and feels like she has nothing to wear. Dorothy would have found this confusing. Pick one thing from this list. Start with the iron. Come back in the comments and tell me what changed. The next video is ready. Look at any photograph of a Black woman from 1958. A church social in Atlanta. A wedding portrait from Detroit in October. A family photograph from a porch in Memphis in the middle of July. Look at the skin, not the makeup, because most of these women are wearing very little. Look at the skin underneath, the evenness of the tone across the face. The way the light falls on the cheekbones. The forehead that is smooth at 40, smooth at 50, smooth at 60. These women did not have a dermatologist on retainer. They did not own a vitamin C serum or a retinol that cost more than their monthly grocery bill. They had not heard the word microbiome, and they did not need to. What they had was a routine that fit on the corner of a dresser. A small jar, a small bottle, a tin. Maybe 4 or 5 things total. And the knowledge of how to use what was already in the kitchen for everything else. The Black skincare market is now worth over $8 billion annually. The fastest growing segment of that market is products specifically formulated for the conditions Black women's skin actually experiences: hyperpigmentation, uneven texture, sensitivity to certain ingredients, realities that mainstream skincare ignored for decades while still selling product into Black communities anyway. The new products are framed as innovation. They are not. They are the slow return of an industry to the things Black women had already figured out by themselves in their own kitchens decades before the industry was willing to listen. This is what they knew, and this is what got buried. Number 8. Cocoa butter, applied straight from the jar, was the daily moisturizer. On the dresser of nearly every Black woman in 1958, sometimes on a shelf in the bathroom, sometimes in the kitchen, was a yellow jar of pure cocoa butter. It was hard at room temperature. She warmed a small amount between her palms until it softened and melted, then pressed it across her face, her neck, her elbows, anywhere the skin needed it. 1 jar lasted months. The cost was almost nothing. Cocoa butter contains a unique fatty acid profile, high concentrations of oleic acid, palmitic acid, and stearic acid. That produces an occlusive barrier on the skin while also delivering emollient compounds into the upper layers. A study published in the Journal of Cosmetic Dermatology documented cocoa butter's effectiveness at improving skin elasticity and reducing transepidermal water loss in deeper skin tones specifically. The polyphenols in cocoa butter also provide measurable antioxidant protection against environmental damage that contributes to premature aging. The luxury moisturizer market is now worth over $40 billion globally. Pure cocoa butter at a beauty supply store costs $4 for 8 ounces. The mechanism is identical. The price is not. Before number 7, I want you to have all of this in one place. Every piece of forgotten wisdom I have recovered is documented in the description below. Number 7. Shea butter on the body, every night before bed. Shea butter arrived in Black American households through West African heritage and through immigration networks that kept the supply chain alive even when mainstream American retail had no interest in selling it. By 1955, raw, unrefined shea butter, yellow, dense, smelling slightly nutty, was on the shelves of nearly every Black household. It went on the body every single night, particularly on the legs, the arms, the hands, anywhere the skin had been exposed to weather, sun, or hot water. Raw shea butter contains vitamins A and E, essential fatty acids, and cinnamic acid esters that provide natural UV protection equivalent to SPF 6. A 2010 study published in the American Journal of Life Sciences confirmed shea butter's anti-inflammatory properties and its role in supporting the skin's natural barrier function. The triterpenes in shea butter, compounds that occur in very few other natural sources, have been documented to have measurable effects on collagen production and skin firmness over time. The shea butter industry has now exploded into a multi-billion-dollar global market, with raw shea butter being sold at premium prices through luxury beauty brands. The same product, in its unprocessed form, sells for under $10 per pound at any Black-owned beauty supply store. The Black women in those 1958 photographs were using the premium product directly. Number 6. Black soap was the cleanser, and it cleaned without stripping. African black soap, made from plantain skins, cocoa pods, palm tree bark, and shea butter, prepared in a traditional process that has not changed in centuries, was the standard facial cleanser in many Black households in 1958. It came in dark, rough blocks. She broke off a small piece, lathered it between her palms with warm water, and applied the lather to her face, then rinsed thoroughly. It did not produce the squeaky, clean, stripped feeling that commercial soap produced. That was the point. Commercial soap with a pH between 9 and 11 disrupts the skin's natural acid mantle, which operates at a pH closer to 5. The disruption breaks down the skin's protective barrier and increases water loss, creating the dryness and irritation that then becomes a reason to buy moisturizer to repair the damage the soap caused. Black soap, in its traditional form, has a pH closer to neutral and contains its own emollient compounds from the shea butter and palm oil in the formulation. A 2018 review published in the Journal of Dermatological Science documented African Black soap's effectiveness for skin of color specifically, noting its gentle cleansing action and its anti-inflammatory properties. It was effective against acne without producing the rebound oiliness that comes from aggressive cleansing. The mainstream skincare industry sells gentle, pH-balanced cleansers for $30 to $60 per bottle. African Black soap costs $5 for a bar that lasts months. Number 5. Lemon juice on dark spots, applied carefully and consistently. Hyperpigmentation. The dark spots that develop on Black skin after acne, irritation, or sun exposure has been a documented concern in Black communities for as long as there have been beauty practices to address it. In 1958, the standard treatment was a small amount of fresh lemon juice, applied to a cotton ball, dabbed onto the dark spot at night, and left to dry, sometimes mixed with a little honey to reduce the acidity, sometimes applied directly. Always at night, never before going into the sun. The mechanism is now well understood. Citric acid is an alpha hydroxy acid. It increases cell turnover at the surface of the skin, gradually fading hyperpigmented areas by accelerating the natural shedding of pigmented cells. The vitamin C content of fresh lemon juice, particularly the L-ascorbic acid form, inhibits tyrosinase, the enzyme responsible for melanin production. The combination of exfoliation and pigment inhibition is exactly the mechanism by which the modern hyperpigmentation industry operates. A modern vitamin C serum for hyperpigmentation costs between $60 and $200 per ounce. A fresh lemon costs 60 cents. The vitamin C content per use is comparable. The Black women in 1958 were using the natural source, applied at night for safety, with full understanding that sun exposure on freshly treated skin would make the problem worse, which is exactly why the modern serums also recommend nighttime application. Number 4. The face was steamed weekly, over a pot from the stove. Once a week, sometimes on Sunday evening after dinner, she put a pot of water on the stove with a handful of whatever was growing: rosemary, basil, sometimes mint, sometimes just the water alone, and brought it to a slow boil. She removed it from the heat, draped a towel over her head and over the pot, and sat with her face about 8 inches above the steam for 10 or 15 minutes. The pores opened, the skin softened. Anything that had been sitting in the surface layer came up to where it could be wiped away with a clean cloth. The mechanism is identical to the modern facial steamer that sells for between $40 and $200. Steam at the right temperature opens the pores, loosens debris, increases circulation to the surface of the skin, and creates the conditions for deeper cleansing without harsh products. The herbs added to the water: rosemary contains rosmarinic acid with documented antimicrobial properties. Basil contains eugenol. Mint contains menthol that briefly increases blood flow to the skin, added measurable functional benefits to what was already a useful practice. The facial steamer industry is now worth several $100 million annually. She was getting the same result with a pot of water, a kitchen towel, and 10 minutes on a Sunday evening. Number 3. Vaseline sealed everything in at night. After the cocoa butter or the lemon juice or whatever the night's treatment was, A thin layer of petroleum jelly went over the top, particularly on the face, particularly in winter, particularly during the dry months when the radiator heat was pulling moisture out of the skin all night long. This was not moisturizing. This was sealing. The petroleum jelly trapped everything underneath it against the skin, preventing the evaporation that would otherwise undo the work of whatever had been applied. This practice, now called slugging in modern skincare communities, became one of the most searched skincare techniques of 2023. It was presented as a discovery. It was not a discovery. Black women had been doing this for at least 70 years, and their grandmothers had been doing it before them. The 2021 Journal of Investigative Dermatology study that confirmed the mechanism of petroleum jelly's effectiveness was confirming what was already standard practice in Black households. The occlusive moisturizer market is now worth billions of dollars. Petroleum jelly costs $3 for a large jar that lasts more than a year. Number 2. The water she drank was as much skincare as anything on the dresser. In 1958, the standard advice from older Black women to younger ones was simple and consistent: drink your water. Not as a wellness practice, not as a dietary recommendation, as skincare. The connection between hydration and the appearance of the skin was understood at a practical level long before the research arrived to explain it. Skin is approximately 64% water. Chronic mild dehydration produces visible effects, duller skin tone, more visible fine lines, reduced elasticity, slower healing, that no amount of topical product can fully correct. The studies confirming this are now extensive. Black women who came up in households where their mothers told them to drink water, really drink it, not sip it, but consume it in real quantities throughout the day, were operating with a foundational practice that no serum can substitute for. The supplement industry now sells hydration packets for $2 to $4 each. Water from the tap costs effectively nothing. The result on the skin is the same. Number 1. The whole system was built on the belief that her skin was already good. This is the one that held everything else together. The skincare industry, from its earliest days marketing into Black communities, has been built on a foundational premise: that Black skin is a problem requiring intervention. The intervention has taken different forms in different decades. Skin lightening creams in the 1950s and 1960s, products promising to even out complexions in the 1970s and 1980s, the current wave of brightening serums that perform the same function under more sophisticated marketing language. The premise has remained consistent. There is something about your skin that needs to be fixed. Buy this product to fix it. The woman in the photograph from 1958 did not agree with this premise. She had been taught by her mother, by the older women at church, by the women who ran the beauty parlor where she had her hair done every other Saturday, that her skin was something to care for, not correct. The care was specific. The care was skilled. The cocoa butter, the shea butter, the black soap, the lemon for the spots, the steam on Sunday night, the petroleum jelly, the water she drank, all of it was maintenance of something already worth maintaining. None of it was correction of something fundamentally wrong. This belief was the foundation that made everything else work. A woman who believes her skin is the problem will buy whatever the industry tells her will fix it, regardless of whether the product works, and will keep buying when the next product replaces the last one. A woman who believes her skin is good will use the small number of things she knows work, will refuse to buy what she does not need, and will pass that knowledge to her daughter the same way her mother passed it to her. The skin lightening industry alone, targeting Black women globally, is now worth over $12 billion a year. A meaningful portion of it is built on the assumption that a Black woman will agree, before the transaction takes place, that her skin tone is a deficit. The women in those 1958 photographs did not agree. The evidence is visible in the skin those photographs preserved. Pick one thing from this list. Try it for 2 weeks. Come back in the comments and tell me what changed. The next video is ready. Look at any photograph from 1958. A church social in New Orleans. A house party in Chicago in September. Women in their 30s and 40s who look like they are in their 20s. Skin that is even, unlined, hydrated, hair that is set and holding. Not a single one of them has a 10-step skincare routine. Not one of them owns a vitamin C serum. None of them have had a chemical peel or a laser treatment or a consultation with a dermatologist who charged $200 for 30 minutes and a prescription they couldn't always afford to fill. What they have is a bathroom shelf with maybe 6 things on it. And the 6 things work. They work so consistently across so many women in so many cities over so many decades that the outcomes in those photographs are not accidental. They are the result of a system. The beauty industry spent the next 60 years trying to convince those women that the system was insufficient, that what they needed was not the 6 things on the shelf, but a new product, then another new product, then a routine built around the products, then a subscription to maintain the routine. The industry grew to over $500 billion a year. The skin in the photographs did not improve. What the women in those photographs were doing has now been validated, piece by piece, by peer-reviewed research in dermatology and nutrition science. Not because scientists discovered anything new, because they finally studied what already existed. And what they found, almost without exception, was that the practices those women inherited from their mothers and grandmothers, practices built from kitchen ingredients and drugstore staples and common sense passed woman to woman across generations, worked exactly as well as the women using them had always said they did. This is what they knew. Before number 9 subscribe, this channel exists to recover exactly this. Hit that button, then let's go. Number 9, petroleum jelly on damp skin every night before anything else. The bathroom shelf had 1 jar of petroleum jelly. Vaseline, usually 35 cents at the drugstore. She washed her face with warm water, patted it until it was almost dry, but not completely. And while the skin was still slightly damp, she pressed a very thin layer of petroleum jelly across her cheeks, her forehead, and the sides of her neck. This is called slugging. In 2023, it became one of the most searched skincare techniques on TikTok, presented as a new discovery. It is not a new discovery. It is what Black women in the American South and in Black urban neighborhoods across the country had been doing since at least the 1940s, passed from mother to daughter with the instruction, not too much, and put it on while it's still wet. The mechanism was documented in a 2021 study in the Journal of Investigative Dermatology. Petroleum jelly applied to slightly damp skin forms an occlusive barrier that locks in the transepidermal water loss the skin experiences overnight. It does not moisturize the skin directly. It traps the moisture already present in the skin, preventing it from evaporating while you sleep. The result, over weeks of consistent use, is a measurable increase in the skin's baseline hydration level. The global moisturizer industry is now worth over $40 billion a year. Petroleum jelly costs 35 cents an ounce. The mechanism is identical. What changed was the marketing. Number 8, witch hazel as the morning toner, before anything else went on. The bottle of witch hazel on her bathroom shelf was not a skincare product in the way that phrase means something now. It was medicine cabinet standard, the same bottle that had been in the cabinet since her mother moved in and before that in her grandmother's cabinet. Every morning after washing her face, she tipped the bottle against a square of cotton and pressed it lightly across her forehead, her nose, her chin. 1 pass. 30 seconds. A 2002 study published in the European Journal of Pediatrics confirmed witch hazel's anti-inflammatory efficacy. Research in skin pharmacology and physiology documented its antimicrobial action against acne-causing bacteria. The tannins in witch hazel, the active compounds responsible for its astringent effect, contract skin tissue, temporarily tighten the appearance of pores, and control surface oil without disrupting the skin's acid mantle. The global facial toner market is now worth over $2 billion a year. Most toners, when you read the ingredient list, contain witch hazel as the primary active compound, priced at $45 in a frosted glass bottle. Her bottle cost 60 cents. One bottle lasted 6 months. The compound is identical, the price is not. Number 7. Castor oil on the edges and the hairline, not the styling gel. On the bathroom shelf between the witch hazel and the petroleum jelly was a small bottle of castor oil. She used it on her edges, the fine hair along the hairline that breaks first under tension and grows back slowest, rubbed in with a fingertip or a soft toothbrush, massaged into the scalp along the hairline every few nights. A study published in the Journal of Cosmetic Science found that castor oil's high ricinoleic acid content, approximately 90% of its fatty acid composition, produces anti-inflammatory effects at the scalp level that create a more favorable environment for hair follicle function. A 2022 review in Dermatology and Therapy found that scalp massage alone, performed for 4 minutes daily over 24 weeks, measurably increased hair thickness in participants. She was doing both simultaneously without a study to reference because her mother had told her to, and her mother's edges had always been full. The hair growth supplement market is now worth over $1 billion a year globally. Castor oil at a beauty supply store costs $3 for 4 ounces. She knew which one worked. Number 6. Glycerin and water mixed in the palm applied to damp skin. On the shelf, beside the castor oil, a small bottle of pharmaceutical glycerin. She kept it on the same shelf for the same reason she kept the witch hazel, because it had always been there, because her mother used it, and because she had never needed a reason more specific than that it worked. 3 drops of glycerin into her palm, 3 drops of water, rubbed together, pressed across her face while it was still slightly damp. Glycerin is a humectant. It draws water molecules from the surrounding air and from the deeper layers of the dermis toward the surface of the skin, keeping the outermost layer continuously hydrated. A 2016 study in the Journal of Investigative Dermatology compared glycerin directly to hyaluronic acid, the ingredient currently driving the global serum market, and found glycerin produced superior sustained surface hydration over a 12-hour period. The hyaluronic acid skincare market is now worth over $3 billion. A pharmaceutical bottle of glycerin at any drugstore costs under $3. It lasts 4 months. She was using the superior product the entire time. Before number 5, I want you to have all of this in one place. Before this knowledge disappears completely, every beauty ritual, every health practice, every style standard, every piece of forgotten wisdom from the 1950s and 1960s that I have recovered on this channel is documented in the description below. Number 5, the oatmeal face mask, made on Friday night from the breakfast canister. Friday night was the face mask. She did not call it a face mask. She took a handful of oats from the round Quaker canister on the kitchen shelf, the same canister that would make tomorrow morning's breakfast, ground them roughly between her palms or in a small bowl, mixed them with warm water and a spoonful of raw honey until they formed a paste, and pressed it across her face while the week's ironing dried on the chair beside the board. 15 minutes. Rinsed off with warm water and then cold. The FDA approved colloidal oatmeal as an over-the-counter skin protectant in 1990, formally recognizing what the research had been building toward for years. A study in the Journal of Drugs and Dermatology confirmed that colloidal oatmeal relieves itch, reduces surface inflammation, restores the skin's barrier function, and is non-irritating across all skin types, including the most reactive. The avenanthramides, phenolic compounds unique to oats, have documented anti-inflammatory and antioxidant properties that operate at the cellular level. The global colloidal oatmeal skincare market is now worth over $800 million. Colloidal oatmeal face masks sell for $35 at Sephora. She was using the breakfast oats. The active compound is identical. Number 4, raw honey as a spot treatment and mask base, not a sweetener. The honey she kept on the kitchen shelf was raw, unfiltered honey, the kind with visible comb fragments and a cloudiness that mass-produced honey doesn't have, bought from whoever in the neighborhood kept bees, or from a specific vendor at the market who had sold the same product for 20 years. A small amount went on to an active breakout as a spot treatment and was left overnight. A larger amount went into the oatmeal mask on Friday nights. A 2011 review published in the Asian Pacific Journal of Tropical Biomedicine documented raw honey's broad-spectrum antimicrobial activity, driven primarily by its hydrogen peroxide content, its low water activity, and its acidity. A combination that makes it inhospitable to the bacteria responsible for acne. A 2014 study in the International Wound Journal confirmed raw honey's anti-inflammatory action and its role in supporting skin barrier repair. The blemish treatment market is now worth over $5 billion globally. Raw honey at a farmer's market costs $7 for 8 ounces. The mechanism is more complex than most blemish treatments on the market, not less. She was not using a primitive remedy. She was using a biochemically sophisticated one. Number 3, no soap above the jawline. Ever? This is the one that sounds the most restrictive and is, by current dermatological consensus, the most correct. She washed her body with soap. She did not wash her face with it. The face got warm water, and sometimes a small amount of whatever cleansing cream was on the shelf, and the soap stayed below the jawline as a rule she did not question, because it had been stated as a fact when she was young, soap is too strong for your face. A 2021 paper in Clinics in Dermatology reviewed the evidence on facial cleansing and found that traditional soap alkaline with a pH between 9 and 11 significantly disrupts the skin's acid mantle, which operates at a pH of approximately 4.5 to 5.5. This disruption breaks down the skin's natural protective barrier, increases transepidermal water loss, and creates conditions favorable to the bacteria associated with acne and inflammatory skin conditions. The paper recommended against facial soap use in favor of gentle, pH-balanced cleansers. The gentle facial cleanser market is now worth $15 billion a year. She saved the cost of that product entirely by following a rule her grandmother had stated without a citation and without a peer-reviewed paper to back it up. The paper arrived 70 years later and said she was right. Number 2, she protected herself from the sun before protecting meant sunscreen. She was not using sunscreen. She was using shade. She sought it. She wore hats with brims wide enough to matter. Not for fashion, though they were certainly fashionable, but because direct sun exposure on skin she had spent years maintaining was not something she allowed without a reason. She crossed to the shady side of the street. She wore long sleeves when the sun was high. When she was outside for extended time, she positioned herself under trees or awnings. A study published in the British Journal of Dermatology confirmed that chronic low-level UV exposure, the kind accumulated not from beach days but from daily ambient sun, accounts for approximately 80% of visible skin aging, including fine lines, uneven pigmentation, and loss of elasticity. She was not avoiding the sun because a dermatologist told her to. She was avoiding unnecessary sun exposure because the practice was embedded in the aesthetic standards of her community. Women who valued maintained skin were women who did not let the sun have unnecessary access to it. The global sunscreen market is now worth $15 billion. Shade is free. The mechanism, reduced UV exposure means reduced collagen degradation, is identical. Number 1, she looked at her face every morning and did not see a problem that needed solving. This is the one that made everything else on this list work. By 1958, The beauty industry had spent 20 years telling Black women that their natural skin tone was uneven in ways that required lightening, that their texture was a problem requiring treatment, that their features were a before photograph waiting for an after. Skin bleaching products, lightening creams, products marketed explicitly toward the erasure of the visible evidence of Blackness in favor of something closer to a standard those products could never have been designed to meet. She did not buy them. Not because she couldn't occasionally afford them, because her mother had looked at her face when she was young and told her what it was. Not a project. Not a deficit. A face that required care, the petroleum jelly, the witch hazel, the castor oil, the oatmeal, the honey, the shade, but not correction. The skin lightening market targeting Black women globally is now worth over $12 billion a year. A meaningful portion of it is built on convincing a woman to agree that her skin is the problem before the transaction can take place. She never agreed. Her skin showed that clearly in every photograph from 1958. The 6 things on her bathroom shelf, petroleum jelly, witch hazel, castor oil, glycerin, oatmeal, raw honey, cost less than $8 combined. They have been validated, one by one, by the same scientific establishment that spent decades ignoring them. They worked in 1958 for the reason they work now, which is that they were always working, and anyone who was paying attention to the results could see that. Nobody needed a study. The photographs were the evidence. Pick one thing from this list. Try it for 2 weeks. Come back in the comments and tell me what changed. The next video is ready. Look at any photograph of a Black woman from 1958. Look at the hair, not the style, although the style is its own subject. Look at the hair itself, the shine, the density, the way it holds whatever it has been set into for hours and hours without breaking down. Look at the woman in her 40s, then the woman in her 60s. The hair is still there. The hair is still thick. The edges have not retreated. The crown has not thinned. These women did not have a 6-figure hair care routine. They did not own a vitamin C scalp serum. They had not been to a trichologist or paid for a microbiome analysis of their scalp. What they had was a kitchen, a press and curl appointment every 2 weeks, and a system. Passed mother to daughter to granddaughter in beauty parlors and on porches and at the kitchen table on Saturday afternoons, that produced results the modern hair care industry has spent 60 years and billions of dollars trying to replicate without ever quite matching. What they had was knowledge. And what happened to that knowledge between then and now was not that it stopped working. It got buried. Here are 8 things they knew before they were told to forget it. Number 8, they washed their hair once every 1 to 2 weeks, not more. In 1958, Black women did not wash their hair every day. They did not wash it every 3 days. The standard interval was 1 to 2 weeks, and frequently longer in the winter months when the air was dry and the hair needed every bit of natural oil it could keep. This was not because washing was inconvenient. It was because washing too frequently was understood, correctly, to strip the hair of the sebum it needed to stay flexible, hydrated, and intact. The American shampoo market grew through the 1970s and 1980s on the marketing premise that Black women should wash their hair more frequently. The advertising was direct. Cleaner is better. Squeaky clean was the goal. The reality, documented now in peer-reviewed dermatological research, is that the sebum on Black hair travels down the strand much more slowly than it does on straight hair because of the structural curl pattern, which means Black hair needs less frequent washing, not more. The longer interval gives the sebum time to migrate from the scalp down the length of the hair, naturally conditioning it as it goes. The Journal of Cosmetic Dermatology has published research confirming that infrequent washing, once every 1 to 2 weeks, is the dermatologically appropriate practice for tightly coiled hair textures. The grandmothers who passed this rule down were not being old-fashioned. They were applying observational knowledge about their own hair that the science would confirm decades later. The Black hair care market is now worth over $15 billion annually. A substantial portion of that revenue depends on the assumption that the hair needs to be washed more often than it actually does. Before number 7, I want you to have all of this in one place. Every piece of forgotten wisdom I have recovered is documented in the description below. Number 7. Coconut oil was the staple, applied to the scalp and the length, before any heat. On the dresser of nearly every Black woman in 1958, in a small jar or sometimes a tin, was coconut oil. Not a styling product, not a serum. A simple, single-ingredient kitchen oil that had been on dressers in Black households for generations, because it worked. She warmed a small amount between her palms, worked it through the scalp first with her fingertips, then drew it down the length of the hair before any styling, any heat, any setting. A 2003 study published in the Journal of Cosmetic Science compared coconut oil, mineral oil, and sunflower oil for their effects on hair. The study found that coconut oil was the only one of the three that actually penetrated the hair shaft, reducing protein loss in the strand and protecting against the breakage caused by heat styling and mechanical stress. The molecular size and structure of coconut oil, specifically its lauric acid content, allowed it to enter the cortex of the hair where conditioning agents in modern products often only coat the surface. She did not know about lauric acid. She knew that coconut oil made the hair softer, easier to detangle, less prone to breaking when she pressed it. The science arrived 70 years later and confirmed she had been using the most effective penetrating hair oil available the entire time. It cost almost nothing. A small jar lasted months. Number 6. The hot oil treatment was a weekly ritual, not a luxury service. Once a week, sometimes twice if the hair needed it, the small bottle of oil, coconut or olive, or a mix that included castor oil, was warmed over the stove until it was hot but not boiling, then applied to the scalp and worked through the length of the hair. A plastic cap went over it. A warm towel went over the cap. She sat under it for 30 minutes or an hour, sometimes longer, while she did something else. Cooked, folded laundry, read the paper. The mechanism is now well understood. Gentle heat opens the cuticle of the hair shaft, allowing the conditioning oils to penetrate more deeply than they would at room temperature. A study published in the International Journal of Trichology documented that pre-wash oil treatments significantly reduce hygrofatigue, the damage caused by hair repeatedly absorbing and releasing water during washing. The pre-wash oil treatment is now a luxury salon service offered at $60 to $120 per treatment. She did it on Saturday afternoon with whatever was on the shelf and a kitchen towel. Number 5. Castor oil on the edges. Every night, no exceptions. The bottle of castor oil sat on the bathroom shelf and went into a fingertip every single night before bed. She massaged it into her edges, the fine hair along the hairline, the temples, the nape, the areas that thin first under tension and grow back slowest. The massage itself took 30 seconds. The bottle lasted 3 months. Castor oil contains approximately 90% ricinoleic acid, a compound that produces anti-inflammatory effects at the scalp level and creates conditions favorable to follicular function. A 2022 review published in Dermatology and Therapy found that scalp massage alone, performed for 4 minutes daily over 24 weeks, measurably increased hair thickness in study participants. She was doing both simultaneously, the castor oil and the massage, without a study to reference, because her mother had told her to and her mother's edges had always been intact. The hair growth supplement market is now worth over $1 billion globally. Castor oil at a beauty supply store cost $3 for 4 ounces. She knew which one worked. The science confirms it. Number 4. The satin or silk scarf at night, every night, without exception. Before bed, the hair was wrapped, either in a satin scarf tied at the front or in a silk pillowcase, or both. This was not vanity. This was friction management. Cotton pillowcases pull moisture from the hair throughout the night and create mechanical friction against the strands as the head moves, causing micro breakage that accumulates over weeks and months into visible damage. Silk and satin have a smooth surface that allows the hair to glide rather than catch. The scarf was not optional. It was as automatic as brushing teeth before bed. A Black woman in 1958 did not get into bed without wrapping her hair, because the woman who had taught her how to take care of her hair had been wrapping hers since she had hair to wrap, and the woman who had taught that woman had done the same. The knowledge transferred without explanation. The silk bonnet industry now sells at $15 to $40 per piece, marketed as a hair care innovation. The innovation is approximately 150 years old in Black households. Before number 3, subscribe. This is exactly what this channel exists to recover. Hit that button. Then let's go. Number 3. The press and curl was a measured technique, not an aggressive heat application. The press and curl, the standard styling method for Black hair in this era, was not a destructive process when performed correctly. The hot comb went through hair that had been thoroughly oiled with grease that contained beeswax, petrolatum, and a small amount of mineral oil. A composition specifically designed to coat the hair shaft and protect it from direct contact with the heated metal. The temperature was controlled. The comb did not linger on any one section. The technique was learned over years from women who knew exactly how to hold the comb, exactly how long to count, exactly how to recognize the smell of hair that was being damaged versus hair that was being styled. The chemical relaxer industry, which began aggressive marketing into Black communities in the 1960s and exploded through the 1970s and 1980s, replaced this skill-based, heat-protected styling method with a chemical alternative that required no skill and produced permanent structural changes to the hair. The marketing framed the chemical relaxer as modern, convenient, and professional. What it actually was, biochemically, was a sodium hydroxide compound capable of breaking the disulfide bonds of the hair protein and dissolving the protective protein structures of the scalp on prolonged contact. Studies published in the American Journal of Epidemiology have linked long-term relaxer use to elevated risk of multiple health conditions in Black women. The press and curl, performed correctly, was a styling method. The relaxer that replaced it was a chemical procedure. The conflation of the two by the beauty industry, the suggestion that the relaxer was simply a more convenient version of the press, was one of the most consequential pieces of marketing in 20th century hair care. Number 2. The deep conditioning treatment was made at home from kitchen ingredients. Once or twice a month, she made a deep conditioner at the kitchen counter. The recipe varied by woman, by region, by what was in the kitchen on the day she made it, but the components were consistent. Half a ripe avocado mashed with a fork, a tablespoon of mayonnaise or a whole egg, 2 tablespoons of olive oil or coconut oil, a teaspoon of honey, if there was honey, sometimes a banana mashed in. The mixture went onto clean, damp hair, was worked through from root to tip, covered with a plastic cap, and left in for 30 minutes to an hour while she did something else. Every ingredient in this list has been independently validated by modern hair care research. Avocado contains monounsaturated fats and biotin that condition the hair shaft. Eggs contain protein that bonds to damaged areas of the cuticle. Honey is a humectant that draws moisture into the hair. Olive oil is an emollient that softens the cuticle and reduces frizz. The mixture she made on Saturday afternoon for 50 cents in ingredients is functionally equivalent to a deep conditioning treatment now sold by luxury hair brands for $50 per jar. Number 1. She did not believe her hair was a problem requiring correction. This is the one that held everything else together. The Black hair care industry, at every point in its development from the 1960s forward, has been built on a foundational premise that Black hair in its natural state is a problem requiring intervention. The intervention has taken different forms in different decades. Relaxers, perms, weaves, extensions, keratin treatments, the constant rotation of products promising to fix a deficiency that was never actually a deficiency. The premise has remained consistent. There is something wrong with your hair. Buy this product to address it. The woman in the photograph from 1958 did not agree with this premise. She had been taught by her mother, by her grandmother, by the women in the beauty parlor on Saturday afternoon, by the older women at church who took her aside and showed her how to do things. That her hair was something to be cared for, not corrected. The care was elaborate, the care was skilled, the care took time. But the underlying assumption was that what grew from her head was good, was worth maintaining, and would respond to the right treatment with health and length and density. This belief was not abstract. It produced specific behaviors. She invested in tools, the right brush, the right comb, the satin pillowcase, the press oil, because the hair was worth investing in. She gave the hair time, the weekly oiling, the monthly deep treatment, the careful Sunday night setting, because the hair deserved time. She protected the hair from things that would damage it: overwashing, cotton at night, excessive heat, harsh chemicals, because the hair was worth protecting. The entire system was downstream of a single belief: this hair, my hair, is worth all of this. She passed this assumption to her daughter in most cases. The chain broke somewhere in the late 1960s and through the 1970s, when the marketing budgets of the black hair care industry grew large enough to drown out the inherited knowledge, and a generation of black girls grew up being told their hair was the problem before they were old enough to evaluate the claim independently. The hair was straightened so it would be acceptable. The natural texture was treated as an obstacle. The maintenance practices that had kept their grandmother's hair healthy were dismissed as old-fashioned, while the chemical treatments that damaged it were framed as modern and aspirational. The natural hair movement that began in the late 1990s and accelerated through the 2000s and 2010s is, in many ways, the slow return of women to what their great-grandmothers had always known. The water only washes, the pre-poo oils, the protective styling, the wrapping at night, the deep conditioner made from food. None of it is new. All of it is recovered, passed forward again, in beauty parlors and on YouTube channels and in conversations between mothers and daughters, the same way it had always traveled before the industry tried to interrupt the transmission. The $15 billion black hair care industry is now adjusting its marketing to embrace the natural hair movement it spent 40 years trying to suppress. The bottles are being relabeled. The ingredients are being highlighted. The same companies that sold the relaxer in 1985 are now selling the leave-in conditioner in 2025. The marketing language has changed. The product margins have not. The women in those photographs from 1958 are not surprised. They are not vindicated. They had not been waiting for the industry to come around. They had simply been right the whole time. Pick one thing from this list. Try it for 2 weeks. Come back in the comments and tell me what changed. The next video is ready. Her name was Clara. In 1962, she stood on the front steps of her house in Birmingham, Alabama, in a yellow cotton dress, her hair pinned back, skin smooth and unlined in the afternoon sun. She was 43 years old. Nobody would have guessed 43. The woman in the photograph beside her, a white neighbor, same age, same neighborhood, looked a decade older. Same sun, same years, same life. Clara did not have a skincare routine. She did not use the word routine for anything she did to her face. She did not have a dermatologist, a serum, a retinol, a peptide, or a collagen supplement. She had a jar of Vaseline on the bathroom shelf, a bar of soap she used on her body but not her face, a bottle of cocoa butter she bought for 50 cents, and a small pot of shea butter her mother sent from her cousin's family in Georgia every spring, rendered and packed in a glass jar. No label. That was it. That was the entire routine. She wore the same face to her daughter's wedding in 1984 that she had worn in that 1962 photograph. 22 years and 4 children later, the lines that had come were soft. The skin still held. Her daughter's friends asked how old she was. and did not believe the answer. Nobody in Clara's house called any of this a beauty ritual. Nobody had a 10-step regimen. Nobody owned a product that cost more than $1. What Clara had were 8 habits so ordinary she never thought to name them. Neither did any other Black woman in her neighborhood, because every woman on that block was doing the same thing. Then the industry arrived. It looked like it came to help. It came with products in gold packaging and promises in medical language and advertisements in Ebony magazine featuring women with skin that glowed. It told Black women that what they had in that bathroom cabinet was not enough, that they needed more, that the jar their grandmother sent was old-fashioned. It was lying. This video is about what those women knew. Before number 8, subscribe. This channel exists to make exactly this kind of video. Hit that button, then let's go. Before we get to the habits, there is one thing that needs to be said plainly because the beauty industry has spent 60 years trying to make you forget it. Black skin ages differently. Not as a compliment, not as a cliche, as a biological fact documented in peer-reviewed research. A study published in the Journal of Clinical and Aesthetic Dermatology found that signs of aging appear, on average, 10 years later in people with darker skin than in people with lighter skin. A decade. Not because of luck, because of melanin. Darker skin contains more melanin, and melanin acts as a natural shield against ultraviolet radiation, the primary driver of photoaging, the kind of aging that causes wrinkles, fine lines, and loss of skin elasticity. Research published in Photochemistry and Photobiology found that Black epidermis provides, on average, an SPF equivalent of 13.4. Built in, present from birth, not purchased from a display case. What that means is this: a Black woman in 1962, all other things being equal, already had a biological advantage her white neighbor did not have. She started the race 10 years ahead. The beauty industry's response to that fact was not to tell her. The industry's response was to convince her that she had a problem: dullness, unevenness, hyperpigmentation, texture, and then sell her the solution to a problem she had been manipulated into believing existed. The global skincare industry is now worth over $180 billion a year. It was built in significant part on teaching women to distrust what they already had. Clara never distrusted what she had. That is why she still looked 43 at 65. Here's what she was doing. Number 8, she never put soap on her face. Tuesday morning, Birmingham, 1962. Clara was at the bathroom sink before anyone else in the house was awake. She washed her face with warm water and her hands. No soap. The bar of ivory on the sink ledge was for her body. It never went above the jawline. Her mother had told her this. Her mother's mother had told her mother. She did not know the word pH. She did not know that standard bar soap has an alkaline pH between 9 and 10, and that human skin has a natural acidic pH between 4.5 and 5.5. She did not know that washing the face with alkaline soap strips the acid mantle, the skin's natural protective barrier, disrupting the microbiome that keeps moisture in and irritants out. She did not know that disrupting the acid mantle in darker skin types can trigger post-inflammatory hyperpigmentation, dark spots, as the skin's melanocytes overreact to the assault. She just knew that her mother had told her not to do it, and her skin had been telling her the same thing ever since she listened. The facial cleanser market is now worth over $15 billion a year. The soap companies that expanded into the face wash category in the 1970s and the 1980s did so by first convincing women that their faces were dirty and that water alone was insufficient. Neutrogena, Oil of Olay, and a dozen competitors launched specifically to solve the problem of the unwashed face. The problem had been manufactured by the companies selling the solution. Clara washed her face with warm water for 40 years. Her skin held its barrier. Her melanin did its job. Nothing disrupted the system that was already working. It was just Tuesday morning. Number 7. Vaseline was the last thing she put on her face at night. After she washed her face at night with warm water and her hands and nothing else, Clara opened the jar of Vaseline on the bathroom shelf. She took the smallest amount, less than a pea, rubbed it between her fingertips until it went clear, and pressed it lightly across her forehead, her cheeks, the corners of her eyes. Not thick, barely there. Then she went to bed. She did not call this anything. It was just what you did. Vaseline's own website now acknowledges what dermatologists have started saying publicly. Slugging, the practice of applying a thin layer of petrolatum as the final step in a nighttime skincare routine, has been a tradition in Black households for decades. The beauty industry did not invent it. They rebranded it, packaged it in frosted glass, charged $45 for a jar, and sold it back to the women whose grandmothers had been doing it for nothing. A 2015 study published in the Journal of Allergy and Clinical Immunology found that petrolatum increased the thickness of the outermost skin layer and stimulated production of filaggrin and loricrin, two proteins essential to the skin's barrier integrity. It stopped up to 98% of transepidermal water loss overnight. That is the process that keeps skin plump, elastic, and unlined. A 35-cent jar at the corner pharmacy. Clara bought one every 3 months. The luxury skincare market, serums, overnight masks, and barrier creams with ingredients that approximate what petrolatum does for a fraction of the molecular efficiency is now worth $50 billion a year. The jar has not changed. The price has. What changed is who was allowed to profit from knowing it worked. Number 6, cocoa butter on damp skin. Always damp. When Clara stepped out of her bath in the evening, she did not dry off completely. She pressed the towel to her face and blotted. Her body was still warm, still slightly damp, when she reached for the Palmer's cocoa butter on the shelf beside the tub. She rubbed it in while her pores were still open and the surface water was still present on her skin. She did this every night without exception. Her mother had done it. Her grandmother had done it. She did not know the term transepidermal water loss. She did not know that the window immediately after bathing, while the skin is still warm and slightly wet, is when occlusives and emollients penetrate most effectively, locking the surface moisture into the dermis before it evaporates. She did not know that cocoa butter contains phytosterols and fatty acids that support the skin's lipid barrier, or that a 2010 study found regular cocoa butter application associated with measurably improved skin elasticity in women over 40. She just knew that her grandmother had told her you moisturize on damp skin, not dry, and that if you waited until your skin was dry, you had already lost the fight. Palmer's cocoa butter launched in 1840. The product she used was not new. What was new, starting in the 1980s and accelerating through the 1990s, was the beauty industry's campaign to convince women that basic cocoa butter was insufficient, that they needed a serum underneath, a treatment above, a specialized product for every square inch of their face marketed separately. This included targeted moisturizers for the eye area, the lip area, the neck, the décolleté. Each sold at a margin that a 50-cent bar of cocoa butter could not support. Clara bought 1 bar a month. She applied it on damp skin every night for 40 years. Her skin did not look 40 years old when she was 60. Number 5, she never touched her face. There is a photograph of Clara at a church supper in 1967. She is laughing, head back, hands on the table, not near her face, not touching her chin, her cheek, her forehead. Look at photographs of women from that era, any room, any occasion. The hands stay away from the face. Not because anyone thought about it, because putting your hands on your face while you were eating, talking, or sitting in company was simply not what you did. It was a matter of composure, of manners, of self-possession. Nobody talked about bacteria transfer. Nobody had read a paper on how the hands carry oils, environmental pollutants, and microbial content that disrupts the skin's acid mantle when pressed repeatedly against the face throughout the day. Nobody had connected the modern habit of phone-to-face contact to the rise of adult acne and the acceleration of facial skin stress. The average person presses their phone against their face more than 50 times a day. Clara knew none of this. She just kept her hands in her lap. The adult acne treatment market is now worth over $3 billion a year. A significant portion of adult acne in women is now attributed by dermatologists to habitual face touching, phone contact, and the kind of unconscious, constant self-contact that decades of screens and stress have made the default. Clara sat with her hands on the table. It cost nothing. Number 4, shea butter for everything the cocoa butter could not reach. The small pot her mother's cousin sent every spring came with no instructions because none were needed. Clara had been watching shea butter applied since she was old enough to sit still. Her grandmother used it on cracked heels, on knuckles roughened by cold water and laundry, on the skin around the hairline after pressing, on any place the weather or the work had taken something that needed to be put back. She used it on her face only in winter, only on the driest nights, only when the air had taken more than the cocoa butter could return. A small amount, pressed between the palms until it melted, then smoothed in slow circles into the skin until it disappeared. Shea butter has been used across West and Central Africa for centuries. It is extracted from the nuts of the shea tree, Vitellaria paradoxa, and it contains vitamins A, E, and F, along with a concentration of fatty acids that supports collagen production and skin elasticity. Research published in the American Journal of Life Sciences documented shea butter's anti-inflammatory properties and its capacity to support the skin's barrier repair function. The global shea butter market is now worth over $1.7 billion a year. It appears in luxury skincare lines at markups of several $1,000s over the raw ingredient cost. A jar of unrefined shea butter, the same thing Clara used, costs $8 at any African grocery store. It costs $80 in a frosted glass pot with a French name on the label. The cousin in Georgia sent it every spring. It cost nothing because it was family. Number 3, she slept on satin. The pillowcases on Clara's bed were not cotton. They were a satin weave fabric, smooth and cool, handed down from her mother and replaced when they wore out. This was not luxury. It was just how beds were made in her mother's house and in her mother's mother's house before that. She would not have been able to explain why. She just knew that her mother had always made this distinction: cotton for the body linens and smooth fabric for the face. Cotton pillowcases have a rough fiber structure that creates friction against the skin during sleep. That friction, over the 6 to 8 hours a face spends pressed against a pillow each night, stretches and creases the skin repeatedly in the same patterns. Sleep lines, compression wrinkles. Dermatologists now routinely recommend satin or silk pillowcases as one of the most cost-effective anti-aging interventions available for women who sleep primarily on one side. The silk pillowcase market is now worth over $400 million a year. Silk pillowcases are sold in beauty subscription boxes and dermatologist gift guides at prices between $40 and $200 per pillow. The satin weave fabric Clara used cost $2 at the dry goods counter. Her mother had told her to use it. Her skin never processed the reason. It just received the benefit night after night for 40 years. It was just how the bed was made. Number 2, she stayed out of the sun and never apologized for it. Here is what nobody who tells the story of the 1960s Black woman's beauty wants to say plainly. Clara did not tan. She did not sunbathe. She did not sit outdoors in the middle of the day if she had a choice. She wore a wide-brimmed hat to the garden. She did her outside work in the early morning or the late afternoon. She sat in the shade at church picnics. This was not vanity. This was not a skincare strategy. In the American South, staying out of the midday sun was practical. It was too hot to be out there, and it was cultural. Women of Clara's mother's generation had a saying that has mostly been lost. A lady has shade, meaning a woman of composure, of self-possession, managed her exposure. She was not out in the elements without protection. The biology underneath it is worth saying out loud, because the beauty industry never did. Melanin provides a natural SPF equivalent of 13.4, but UV radiation is still UV radiation. Photoaging, which is sun-induced collagen breakdown, free radical damage to skin cells, and the loss of elasticity that comes from cumulative UV exposure still occurs in darker skin, just more slowly. The decade advantage darker skin has over lighter skin is biological, but it is not infinite. It requires not being actively burned through by decades of unprotected midday sun. Clara's habit of seeking shade, of wearing a hat, of doing her outdoor work in the cool hours of the morning compounded the biological advantage she had already been given. She was not depleting her decade's head start. She was adding to it. The global sunscreen market is worth over $11 billion a year. It was built almost entirely around white skin. The marketing of SPF products to Black women came decades later, largely after the damage that an unshaded era had caused in the generation that followed Clara's. She never bought a bottle of sunscreen in her life. She didn't need to. The shade was free. The habit was her grandmother's. Number 1, she never believed her skin was the problem. This is the one. This is the habit the beauty industry spent 60 years and billions of dollars trying to dismantle. Clara did not believe there was something wrong with her skin. She did not believe her complexion was uneven in a way that required fixing, or that her natural texture was a flaw, or that the darkness of her skin in certain areas was damage rather than biology, or that the face she had been given was a project to be worked on. She had been raised in a tradition that predated everything the beauty industry would eventually tell her. Her grandmother had washed her face with water and her hands and patted it dry with a soft cloth. Her mother had rubbed shea butter into her hands when the seasons changed. The women in her church had pressed their faces with powder, darkened their brows, brightened their lips, not to correct a deficit, but to decorate something already whole. Beauty, in Clara's household, was not maintenance against the decay of an inadequate face. It was care for something worth caring for. In the 1950s, white-owned companies began marketing bleaching creams heavily to Black women. Natty Nola, Palmer's skin success, black and white cream, these products contained mercury, hydroquinone, and other compounds later found to be toxic. The marketing was explicit. Your darkness is a problem. We have the solution. The companies that did not believe this were the Black-owned ones. Madam C.J. Walker, whose company explicitly refused to sell bleaching products in her lifetime, built her line on a different premise entirely: that Black women's skin was not broken, that it needed nourishment and care, not correction. Walker died in 1919. The industry continued without her principles. By the 1960s, the bleaching cream market directed at Black women was worth millions, growing toward billions. The message that had been building for decades was the same message the modern skincare industry still carries, wrapped in new language: brightening, evening, correcting. The underlying premise does not change. There is something about the skin you were born in that needs to be fixed before it can be considered beautiful. Clara never believed it. Not once. She had a jar of Vaseline, a bar of Palmer's, a pot from her cousin in Georgia, warm water in her hands before bed, satin pillowcase, wide-brimmed hat for the garden, the habit of keeping her hands in her lap at the table. None of it cost more than a few dollars. None of it required a label to read or a percentage to calculate or a clinical study to trust. All of it had been working in Black households for generations before anyone found a way to charge for it. The global Black beauty market is now worth over $9 billion a year. It is built in large part on products that attempt to sell Black women back the results that Clara and the women before her produced with what they already had. Barrier creams that do what Vaseline does, body butters that do what Shea does, silk pillowcases where satin already existed, sun protection that the shade provided, and the product the industry most needed to sell, the one at the center of it all, was not a cream or a serum or a mask. It was doubt. Once a woman doubts what she has, she will buy what she is sold. The product was the doubt. Everything else was inventory. Clara Wilson died in 2003 at 84. Her daughter found the yellow cotton dress from the 1962 photograph in the cedar chest at the back of the closet. She held it up in the mirror. She set it down. She started reading the back of her skincare bottles. The 8 habits Clara carried her entire life cost less combined than a single bottle of the serums her daughter now buys. None required a subscription. None required doubting the skin she was in. None required believing that what her grandmother had passed down was insufficient. What the industry replaced was not a gap in the routine. There was no gap. What they replaced was the certainty. Pick one thing from this list. Come back in the comments in a week and tell me what it did. The next video is already waiting.